Welcome to the Real News Network. I'm Gregory Wilbert, coming to you from Quito, Ecuador. Germany's largest bank, Deutsche Bank, and Switzerland's Credit Suisse agreed to pay a combined penalty of over $12 billion on Friday. The fine is for having misled investors when these banks sold toxic mortgage derivatives in the run-up to the 2008 financial crisis. About half of the fine will go to the US government and the other half to bank customers, mostly in the form of debt relief. The settlement is far lower than what the US Department of Justice originally had demanded from Deutsche Bank, which was $14 billion from that bank alone. In earlier settlements, US banks such as Citigroup paid $7 billion and JP Morgan paid $13 billion in fines. Joining us from London to talk about the Deutsche Bank penalty is John Weeks. John is Professor Emeritus of Economics at the University of London and is the author of Economics of the 1%, How Mainstream Economics Serves the Rich, Obscures Reality, and Distorts Policy. Thanks for joining us again, John.
Well, thank you for having me.
So what do you make of this fine? As I mentioned it's part of a series of litigation efforts on the part of the Obama administration to penalize banks for their part in the 2008 global financial crisis, for them having sold and misled investors about bad mortgage derivatives. At first, the Justice Department wanted $14 billion, but they now agreed to $7 billion from the Deutsche Bank. Is this figure significant, or do you think it's more like a slap on the wrist? What do you think?
Well, I think it's stronger than a slap on the wrist, but it's a lot less than the Deutsche Bank feared. As you said, in the middle of the year, or back in August, September, the Justice Department was threatening a fine of $14 billion, slightly over $14 billion. Now it is down to about $7 in total, and in fact, only $3.1 billion of it involves a cash fine, a cash payment. The rest is, as you suggested, is relief to the mortgage holders, and even that I think we have to be a bit skeptical about it, because that relief is not going, for the most part, to homeowners who got scammed on their mortgages, because the mortgages have been repackaged and sold on to other financial institutions. So it's very likely that a large amount of that debt relief, as it were, will actually be going to other financial institutions. So that's the first thing. It's better than not doing anything, but it's a long way from what needs to be done. $3 billion is nothing to sneeze at, even for a company as large as Deutsche Bank. Though there was a report in the Financial Times today that said that the $3 billion payment is sufficiently small that it will not put Deutsche Bank in, it will not threaten it with financial instability. This involves a rather arcane rule about what assets you have to hold. So they'll still be all right on that grounds. Then in addition, of course, as I suspect many of the viewers know, the Obama administration has yet to prosecute even one bank official. That is, it's one thing to fine the bank. It's quite another thing to take criminal charges against a bank official, and the Obama administration has not done that at all, not even to one person. Right. And that is quite shocking.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my next question. I mean, on the one hand, it seems like they impose a fine, and then it says, well, we can't impose too high a fine because otherwise it's going to cause the collapse of the bank and perhaps the whole European banking system. But on the other hand, the other option would be precisely filing a criminal charge. I mean, apparently in Iceland, this is what they did. What do you think of that solution? I mean, to file criminal charges against CEOs and upper management, would that be more effective, in effect, than a fine that either risks the bank or is meaningless?
Yes, I think it would be more effective. And before I go into that, I might just mention that you're quite right in that the Obama administration again and again has said we can't have too high fines, nor can we prosecute individuals because that could lead to instability in the financial system. With regard to too high fines, it would have been for the German government to solve that problem. The German government has plenty of funds. They've bailed out banks in Greece. They've bailed out banks other places. They can bail out Deutsche Bank. And it would have, forcing the German government to do that would have sent a very strong message that European banks cannot come to the United States and play fast and loose with the regulations. Now, on the question of prosecuting individuals, yes, I think it would be more effective. And I also think, well, I hate to use such a word, but it would be justice, wouldn't it? I mean, these people committed crimes. You can, if you steal a loaf of bread, you can go to jail in Texas and other places for quite a long time. These people stole billions of dollars. They should go to jail. Whether it's an effective an instrument immediately for getting them to behave better, I think it is. But whether it is or not, they should be tried, and if they're convicted, they should go to jail.
I just wanted to go back to a second to what you said about the Obama administration's argument that they said implied apparently that this would also contribute to some kind of financial instability if they prosecute individuals instead of just imposing fines. But I mean, isn't this also just a matter of if you're misleading somebody, isn't that a criminal offense? And then how would that contribute to financial instability? It's not really, it doesn't really make sense to me.
Well, you're absolutely right. I would say that the criminality is obvious, and if you have a government of laws, then you're supposed to prosecute people who commit crimes. And then if you think that it's inappropriate to do that, then you have to change the law. But as long as you have the law, you should prosecute people. I mean, that is a position taken by several very eminent U.S. judges. There was an article about a couple of years ago by a judge, article in the New York Review of Books, making exactly the argument I'd made, a judge not particularly progressive. And the point he made was that, first of all, it would be effective, and second of all, we prosecute, or we don't, but you know what I mean. Little people are prosecuted, but the bankers are too big to fail and evidently too big to prosecute.
Another interesting issue that this whole case involves is kind of the reciprocal fining business. That is, on the one hand, the U.S. now fined European banks, but just before that, the European Union tried to fine Apple, also to the tune of $14 billion, which was the initial amount that was proposed for Deutsche Bank. And it looks like the Apple tax fine, it was didn't involve fraud. It involved, well, it might actually, but it involved tax evasion, basically. And they're saying that they should pay $14 billion, but now it might be reduced to half. Do you think that there's some kind of a penalty war going on here, perhaps between the U.S. and Europe? And if so, is that perhaps beneficial to people, to citizens in both places?
I think it's possible. I think if it is, it's being initiated from the U.S. side. I mean, the U.S. government has objected to what it considers unfair treatment of several U.S. corporations, Google, Microsoft, others over the last 10 years or so. And I think that this represents those large corporations going to the U.S. government and seeking a patron to stand up for them in political circles. I think it's very important, I mean, this may be obvious to viewers, competition among capitalists is not a purely economic phenomenon. When they're pushed to the wall, or even if they're not that close to the wall, they turn to a government, a friendly government, in hopes that that government will do what the competitive struggle is not doing for them, that is, bail them out. So I think that this is not to the benefit of any citizen in either the European Union or in the United States. And what it represents is a attempt by the large corporations to minimize the punishments for carrying out illegal activities. Having said that, let me just add, as bad as Obama was, and he was pretty bad on this, we're about to enter a presidency where I don't even think the Justice Department will bother to prosecute banks for this type of behavior. I think under Trump, that criminality will be accepted as normal business behavior, which of course it is. But in general, every once in a while, the Obama administration would prosecute criminal behavior. I think it's very unlikely that Trump's head of the Justice Department, very unlikely that he'll be prosecuting any corporations for anything.
Yes, that seems very likely, given that there are so many billionaires in his cabinet.
Exactly. And he might have to start with Donald Trump himself, and so he doesn't want to start with him, so he doesn't want anyone else to set an example.
Right. Well, we were speaking to John Weeks, Professor Emeritus of Economics at the University of London. Thanks, John, for having been on The Real News again.
Well, thank you. And I just want to say to all the watchers, remember to contribute to The Real News this December. It'll be a Christmas gift to everybody.
Great. Thanks so much. And thank you for watching The Real News Network.